Welcome to Coffee and Change. I'm Bill Kirst. As a business professional, a U.S. veteran, a lifelong learner, and an active listener, I help others navigate, understand, and adapt to our ever-changing workplace and world. As a third culture kid, I call many places home. Presently, Seattle is where I explore my creativity through the power of words and images. In this podcast, we journey with our guests, gaining knowledge and inspiration from their stories.
Expert, octopus, precision-driven problem solver. That's how the Aptive Index, an AI assessment, described me recently. It said, I move through the world like someone who sees the flaw in the blueprint before anyone else notices the building is crooked. I'm quietly certain, intellectually sharp, and most at home when I'm the one who actually understands how things work. I'd say it was a pretty accurate assessment. Today, I'm talking with its founder, Jason P. Carroll, who started Aptive Index because, well, he got tired of people having people problems. And so he developed a behavioral science and AI app that can help with that. It helps assess, understand, and solve people problems. This was a fascinating discussion, and I can't wait to have more discussions with Jason in the future as I keep an eye on this space. Thanks for listening. So good morning, Jason. Welcome to the Coffee and Change podcast. I appreciate you joining this morning. Where are you joining from? Where in the world are you joining from?
I'm in Austin, Texas. So it's central time for me, and I just connected the dots how early it is for you. No wonder you call this Coffee and Change.
Yeah, well, if as you'll see at some point in my Aptive Index, I am an early riser. I'm
Okay.
ex-military, so I tend to be up and out the door by like 5:30 or 6 in the morning. However, I'm usually like lying flat and resting again at like 8:30 or 9 at night. So
Yeah.
to be fair,
Right.
um,
I had a mentor in high school who was so busy. He ran a company, he had multiple kids. He was doing like all this kind of crazy stuff. And he was like, if you want to meet with me, it has to be before my kids are up. So
yep.
be at my house at 4:30. So in high school, I was getting to this dude's house at 4:30 a.m.
Wow. Okay. So you were pretty much like prepped almost for military.
Yeah. Well, I still wake up at 3:34 every single day, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So joining us from Austin, which is a great town, by the way. I've spent quite a
Mhm.
bit of time there. Are you originally from there, or did you settle there?
Now, I've been here 20 years. I'm originally from Dallas,
Okay.
Texas through and through. You can't tell, but yep, I'm a Texan.
Hey,
I mean,
well,
I'm a Texan.
I lived in Texas for 7 years as a kid in Houston, actually,
Yeah.
and I remember a lot of people being very confused because myself and my 5 siblings, we never picked up a Texas accent,
Yeah.
not once, and I think it's partly because my parents, my mom was born in Brooklyn, my dad was born in Chicago, so it's almost
Mm,
like the accent you hear at home is kind of
yep.
the one you hear. But no, I love my time in Texas, and Austin is a great town.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. So we connected. You're doing some pretty fascinating stuff with behavior change, AI. Obviously, this is a podcast about people going through change. And the past 10 seasons of this podcast, I've had the opportunity to just really talk to people and understand kind of their journey and change. And now we're at this really interesting apex where AI is sort of like inflected into everything we're doing. So I would love to have you, in your own words, talk about some of the adventuring you're doing, and the technology and the company that you've built around this, because it kind of lies at the intersection of all the things I'm passionate about.
Cool. Yeah, man, I'm super passionate about what I get to do. And you know, there's the business side, and then there's the personal side. And what got me into psychometrics, which is just the fancy term to say it's a scientific version of like a personality test, it was mostly self-awareness. The biggest life change for me was kind of waking up to like more about just better language about who I am, how I'm wired, what moves me through the world. And that was back in like kind of 2015, 16 was like my biggest journey of self-awareness. During that time, I got to go meet Brene Brown and got trained by her for a few days and like just all kinds of cool exploration stuff. But stemming from that was understanding of other people. Just how vastly different we all are in terms of what we need, what motivates, what drains, what energizes. And so that was a big part of my personal story and my business story at my last company, where we had a lot of success, and it was all due to people and culture and like your personal values and things like that. So after I sold that company, this was the world I wanted to be in, and we could talk more about it if it's relevant. But lucky for me as an entrepreneur, the sector I'm in now is very stale and kind of stuck in the Stone Age, and so huge opportunity for disruption and innovation. And but the short of it is, especially as it pertains to change, we're really helping companies across all spectrums gain more self-awareness, build better trust, increase their communication skills, motivate their employees, and it's just awesome work.
And honestly, who would not want that, right? I
Yeah.
feel like we're kind of in this end of times right now. And if anybody could sort of tap into at least one of those things that you talked about, I think it would save people a lot of heartache. It would certainly save companies a lot of money, and misused, investment. There's something that you said on an interview that I really, really liked because it was kind of bold and daring, and that's just kind of similar vein that I'm in. And it's that resumes are garbage. And I
Yeah.
kind of agree 100%. And I'd love for us to talk about this because, it used to be this, God, resumes were such a pain to sort of update, I don't know, every couple years. And now we're at this place where it's like every time there's a quote unquote model change, we change our resume. And that's literally like every other day there's a model change. And so you've spent a lot of time thinking about this thing that honestly is almost the elephant in the room, right? Nobody talks about this. But I would love for you to talk about it because we need to.
Yeah, I mean, uh, the stats on like how many people lie or maybe fib on their resumes is pretty staggering, and it's not new. It's kind of always been that way. I mean, we're like, I think it was like up to like 70 something percent of people would admit to having like just outright lied about sections of their resume and stuff. Going beyond that, it, even before the AI world that we live in, we're the only thing we're really garnering is what have we done previously? The past experience, and maybe we can pick up some skills in that from looking at a resume as well. But w- we also have statistics and studies from like the 80s and 90s that show us that prior skills and experience and formal education, they all have almost zero predictive bearing on success in a new role. And, those studies go and expand on like why. Well, I mean, formal education is obvious. And also we're not talking about specialized. I'm not, I'm not going to have surgery by a surgeon who doesn't have a degree, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But for most roles, and one of the simplest ways that they kind of sum it up is no matter what experience and skills I already have, I'm going to have to relearn and I'm going to have to build new experience at that new company because the context is going to be different. And sometimes those prior skills and experience are actually at detriment because all I really have is how to do things the wrong way. And so fundamentally, starting with skill and experience for who's going to be the best fit for a role is just completely insufficient. Now add to it, Bill, what you were just saying, like, who wrote every chat or every resume that came across our desk now? It's ChatGPT. Um, I don't know which interview you listened to, but I know I've said, and it's true still to this day, I've not seen a single resume of any of my employees or contractors because I just don't care.
I've taken the MBTI, I've taken the Strength Finders multiple times, um, probably over the course of 15 years, done the DISC, done the Enneagram, Enneagram was very eye-opening. I've done Edgewalkers. I've done human design. Yeah, I think you would love Edgewalkers. Honestly, Jason, that's a fun one. Human design cracked me open in a fascinating way. So I've done all of these, and I'm so hungry to learn more because I'm not afraid of the reflection that comes back. Um, so I would love to understand a little bit about what got you here to a place where you're like, all of those individually, interesting, collectively, fascinating, drop AI on top of that. And now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah. So there is the personal side, and then there's like the candidate side. If I'm trying to understand other people around me or whatever myself, there's personality tests, like, anywhere from which Hogwarts house are you, all the way up to like the really scientific ones. For candidates, we have to be really careful. And there's just a little bit of like technical understanding there that you, from like a Department of Labor standpoint, labor laws and stuff like that, you're not supposed to use things like DISC or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, because they have biases and like protected classes and all that. And then sometimes things that they shouldn't be used for, like Aptive Index. We don't measure skills. We don't measure cognitive abilities. We're not looking at somebody's values. There's no right or wrong, good or bad with us, right? That's just, it's what's driving you, what's your motivators, what do you need in order to feel engaged, energized, and what's going to drain you. What's your relationship to emotions? What's your internal activation, your cognitive style, not ability. Um, and so that there's that piece, and then there's all the other types of assessments. The personality ones, like you mentioned a bunch of them, Enneagram, DISC, Myers-Briggs, those are all super helpful. They're not scientific though. And so there's something to kind of like denote there. Like if you are going to use a tool for hiring, you can't use those. I mean, I guess you can. You shouldn't, because you can get sued. So you can do whatever you want. Just know ahead of time, right? If it's not scientifically validated, you shouldn't be using them. And I think they all have their place. I mean, heck, even which Hogwarts house are you can be fun. I mean, hey, I'm a Slytherin. Which Gilmore Girl character are you? I mean, they all have their place, right? What I found was, as I'm getting, so psychometrics made a huge difference for me back at my last company for getting the right people in the right seats, self-awareness, understanding others, motivating, conflict resolution, all that stuff. And I was like obsessed with it, and so I had a psychometric tool. I also used things like StrengthsFinder. We did workshops as a leadership team. And so after that exit, this was the world I wanted to be in. And while none of those are like bad, they didn't really scratch the itch that I saw there's a huge need for, which was, what's the ongoing value of these assessment tools? Like, sure, let's use it for hiring, or let's use it for a workshop or a team building, whatever. That's great. But then they usually just collect dust after that, especially the more like intense scientific ones. They can be really long. Some of them are 45, 60 plus minutes. You have to hire an expert to interpret it for you. Blech, right? I don't want to deal with any of that. And so in the age of AI, which AI does not play any role in scoring our assessment, by the way, that's all like, it's been validated. It's got an algorithm, et cetera. But the AI is the behavioral AI. Like, imagine if you had Simon Sinek or Brene Brown or your therapist, all on speed dial, and they knew you and all of your people intimately. And you could ask anything you wanted, anytime, right? Like, that's essentially what this behavioral AI is enabled. And so clients are using it all the time, every single day. Statistically, most of our clients use it every 24 to 48 hours, which is wild. That means it's gone way beyond hiring. It's like, even just like, I'm jumping onto a meeting with Bill, give me some tips. Or, we've got this project, and then, these are the 8 people in the meeting. Who should do what? Who should I notify ahead of time and give them a chance to think on it? I mean, just use your imagination. Anything you can think of behaviorally, that's what the AI is for. And so that's really where I set out to solve a problem I don't even know if it's a problem we thought existed. We're kind of a new category, right? We're not an assessment platform. We're behavioral intelligence. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. It absolutely does. And, there's an element that I love about the analogy you used, which is sort of speed dial,
Yeah.
right? So like Brene Brown on speed dial or Adam Grant on speed dial,
Mhm.
or, name your sort of preferred big brain that thinks about this stuff on speed dial. And I am curious from your standpoint of having sat with and trained under Brene for 3+ days. I think you mentioned the Dare to Lead, right? Facilitator work that you had done. And then this experience on the other side. Do you find um do you find it one for one? Or is it a little bit like, hey, you know what? The time with Brene was pretty consequential and memorable. I can understand why. I've read all her
Yeah.
stuff, uh, seen her speak and been in the same room with her and all that. Um, but do you find it to be like I'm getting the best of Brene at scale in certain situations? Um, or do you feel like it's still pretty distinct and succinct? I mean, experientially, yes, but
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Like, nothing's going to replace the experiences of meeting these folks, hearing them speak. The Patrick Lencioni's of the world, like that. Just they, their gift is that human element of bringing out insights in ways with like just verbiage and lexicons that we can adapt that we've never heard them before.
mm,
And maybe AI gets to that point someday, but that's more like inspirational and like framework stuff,
yeah,
right? Like, Lencioni's got his, 3 this or that, or his 6 things of, and those are awesome, and AI doesn't really think that way. It has to pull from existing frameworks. And so what we've done is we've developed our own frameworks for self-awareness, for trust. Those are the kind of the main ones, and behavioral interview
mhm,
guides. And so there are frameworks in there, but then we also have the kind of principal IO psychology, behavioral psychology tenets that we say, hey, pull on these. The real power is in the behavioral data,
yeah,
right? No matter how inspirational, Dr. Brene Brown is, she don't know me.
that's right.
And nor does ChatGPT.
Mm-mm.
ChatGPT does a really good job guessing about me based on chat history, but still doesn't know the inner workings of Jason.
Mhm.
And so pulling that out, and even if it did, right? Let's say you and I were butting heads. ChatGPT might know me decently well from chat history, has no clue who you are, right?
Right.
And so if I'm sitting there going, "Hey, how the heck do I resolve this conflict?" It's clueless. I mean, it's going to have generic guides. It's also going to take my side, which is
Of
annoying,
course.
right? And so,
Yes.
and our AI does not. In fact, she'll put a red stop sign emoji and be like, "Hey, I think you need to look in the mirror first." If you're trying to manipulate her to it'll help you like win a fight. Um, Aria is her. That's our AI. I didn't say that in case people are wondering who's he referring to. um, yeah, so that's where the huge unlock is. You add that behavioral data, and it's not just, oh, I'm a D on disk. Take that knowledge and come up with something. It's like on a full 100-point scoring spectrum of 8 specific psychology attributes that we've measured and validated. That's what she's pulling from, which is altogether different than, yeah, I'm a Slytherin, you
Right.
know?
Right. Um, there's so that you kinda took it to a place I wanted to ask about. You referred to Aria as she, her. Again, I
Yeah.
I find the anthropomorphization, it's always a hard word to say,
Yeah.
of said models I find fascinating. Um, I would love to know a little bit about the history of the naming of Aria because 2 things came to mind when I when I first heard it. And, again,
Opera.
well, there's the opera, yes.
Uh,
Also, as someone who studied Italian, I think of that, but I also went to the Game of Thrones. Um,
oh, I haven't seen it. So
okay,
you'll have to tell me.
so there's a character in Game of Thrones named Arya Stark,
Mm.
and she's sort of this, without giving it away, she's starts off as a minor character and ends the sort of arc of that series as a major character. And what I would sort of leave with you is kind of this element of like, don't underestimate Arya, is what I would say. And when you were describing the things you pull together and the psychometrics and the patterns and the nuance and the context, I was like, oh, he definitely named it after Arya Stark. But you didn't.
That's so funny. No,
So now,
no. In fact, I just looked that up. It is spelled differently too. It's
yes,
Aria, but it's it's so much less profound than you want it to be. It's Aptive's resident intelligence assistant,
okay,
or
yeah,
agent, or uh, advisor. Sorry,
advisor, yeah.
it's one of the A words. Yeah. So it literally just spells out an acronym that has to do with Aptive. So,
But now you need an
yeah.
origin story. So
Sorry to
now,
disappoint.
no, you could. Yeah, I mean, again, depending on who you're talking to, depending on the room,
Right.
you could be like, "Here's the origin story of Arya," and you could play a
Yeah.
clip from Game of Thrones. But I do find it interesting because I had something very similar happen where I built a chatbot experience for within an enterprise, right? And I won't go into specifics, but you can imagine what that would look like. And the fascinating thing I found about building this, and at the time it was what we call RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation. So it's a small closed model. It's a set of data. So it's not actually going out to the chat GPTs of the world. It's just, sourcing and giving answers based on that set of data. And I found something really interesting happening with managers that were using this. They started to trust it so much because it had about a
Yeah.
97% resolution rate, which was really high by industry standards. And that's because I've personally validated and verified every piece of data that went in there. So I knew what it was sourcing from. But the interesting thing that happened, and this kind of is what you've talked about, people started asking it higher value questions because they trusted it
Hmm.
so much. And so they started asking things like, why does Jason, make more money than I do? Or, I'm in a discussion with Bill and we're in disagreement. And of course, you imagine the answers they got back, right? Which was, I can't help you with that answer because this is limited only to this data set, which actually had to do with training, right? It was nothing
Yeah.
exciting or
Yeah. That's outside of
consequential
my scope. Yeah.
outside of my scope. But it was fascinating to me, Jason, this aspect of how many people continue to ask it high valued
Hmm.
curiosity. I think what they were searching for was certainty or soothing, like to your point around the
Yeah.
psychometrics and the behavior, something that soothed them, that took them out of a state of
Yeah.
ambiguity. And that's got to be fascinating in your world.
It's unbelievably fascinating. And I, I keep getting these like questions, like a new client will like call me, not like email or whatever. And they're like, hey, are our chats private? And I'd be like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And I reassure them, yeah, like I can't even see them unless you go into your system and flag, grant access. Right.
Hmm.
Um, and after like the third or fourth one, I was like, wait a minute, why are they asking? And so I started probing a little bit, and they're like using Aria as their therapist.
Yep.
Like, I'm talking all in,
Yep.
not like occasional questions. I've got two CEOs, and I'm not exaggerating. They're not trying to blow smoke up my ass. They said to me, Aria saved my marriage.
Mhm.
Like I was filing for divorce, and I didn't. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And what's happening is obviously the behavioral data is just incredibly powerful, but it's also objective. And nobody cares emotionally what Aria thinks.
Yeah.
And so if Aria is sitting here telling me that the disconnect that I have with my spouse is because her emotional resonance is really high and mine is really low, and therefore, XYZ, that's just data. And it's stripped out. If my wife tries to tell me, like, you're an emotional dud, and I can't, I'm like, screw you. I get worked up, I get defensive. But Arya's just like, hey, here's plainly what's going on, at least I think.
Hmm.
And it's data. And then it's like, and by the way, if you really are trying to grow, here's what's going on in the inner world of your wife.
Hmm.
And you do well to understand that. And all of a sudden, I'm taking somebody else's perspective. And I mean, if you're in this business, you know the power of perspective taking and empathy
Absolutely.
and all that. But we're guarded. It's hard to take somebody else's perspective because the first knee jerk is, well, that means that my perspective is being threatened,
That's right.
which is not the case, but it's just the human reaction. And so, yeah, when it's like some freaking LLM using objective data is just telling you something. You're like, all right, I guess that's true. And all of a sudden change is possible.
Well, and I think the most revealing part of it is the objective versus the
Yeah.
subjective. And this is where it's been really interesting to sort of watch, companies like yours kind of be birthed and come to life, because people like me have been trying to stitch this all together manually
Hmm.
for decades, right? Like I've had my my many printouts of my assessments and my folders, and every year we come to the performance review, and every year we get some sort of feedback sandwich, is what I call it, right? And
Yeah.
then you go back to your assessments and you say, well, help me understand. And it's interesting because probably the early days of the LLMs, when ChatGPT started allowing projects, and obviously now Claude has projects,
Hmm.
and it's really fascinating stitching these things together. But when you're right, as a consumer, right, I can do that, but it's only one-sided. It's only one way. When you
Yeah.
apply it in the enterprise, it gets really fascinating. It gets really interesting. And
Yep.
I actually think that's where your sweet spot is in terms of identifying candidates. But there was something else you said, which I loved in a previous interview, and I'd love for you to talk about this. It's helping shape job descriptions that are not written yet with the knowledge that
Yeah.
you have in these. That to me was an unlock, because we keep posting these job descriptions as if it's going to bring us, like the Oracle of Delphi is going to say, here's who you need. And the problem is that job description is actually eliminating the person you need before you even know they exist.
Yeah. The job description thing has been fascinating and we have case studies that are showing that the Aria written job descriptions post figuring out like the ideal kind of behavioral patterns are bringing in not just more, but way higher quality candidates. Um, One of our blue collar clients was like, "W- we've literally never had rooms so full of people, and we had qualified candidates that we couldn't hire because we didn't have slots."
Hmm.
And he's like, "That's never happened, like ever."
Hmm.
And it's because Aria takes this. I mean, what do you usually see? Like, here are the duties, here are the things that I'm going to do in a day, whatever. Boring as all heck. And like a software engineer might be a role, a software engineer job position might be the kind where I have to make a lot of decisions. I have to like use a lot of AI and like think outside the box and constantly pivot. And or it might be like, hey, we've already gotten it 85% here. We need the QA person that
Hmm.
gets us up to 100.
Right.
Those are totally different wirings of a person. Same skill set,
Yep.
right? Totally different humans. And so she's writing these job descriptions to speak to the essence of the person we're trying to attract. So if when they read the Aria job description, the right candidates can't help but think, oh my gosh, I want this job.
Exactly.
Like it's speaking to my soul, versus I just quick applied to 100 jobs and maybe somebody will contact me. So it's been really, really cool to see. And we tell our clients, when you're setting the kind of ideal ranges, don't upload the job description yet.
Yes.
Like literally let Ari do it from scratch once
Resist
you've
it.
done this first piece of work. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really important to kind of name that, what you just talked about, because so many people have this experience, right? You read a job description and you say, oh, I guess I'll put up with all that crap in order to get to that one part, that one sliver of the job description that says this is where the spark is, right? And that, I think our relationship with work, the social contract of work, has become so lopsided that way, Jason, which is like, we look at job descriptions and we say 75% of this thing makes me want to throw up in my mouth, but I'm going to endure it. I'm going to endure the bile so that I can have once a quarter, or maybe once every 6 months, this this thing that speaks to my soul, or this possibility of
Yep.
this thing that speaks to my soul. And that just seems like such a tragedy to me.
It is. Yeah.
And if we can fix that, like, why not? Right? I mean, like if we've
The other
got,
piece of it and on the business side, and this is universal. It happens almost every single time we are creating a position in the platform. we discover that the company has no idea what they're actually trying to hire.
Yeah. That's
Which seems like a no-brainer, but it's so universally true that I think it's just happening everywhere.
Mhm.
We were like, oh, I need an accountant. So here's, I found this job description right up on Indeed. It's from somebody else. I'll tweak it for me. But what do you really need? Like, what's the role entail right now? What's it going to be in 12 months? Who's this person reporting to? That's actually part of how Aria helps us determine the behavioral profile. Because reporting to me, the exact same role with the exact same expectations is going to have a different set of like fires and misfires
Mhm.
of like how we communicate than reporting to, someone like my wife,
Mhm.
right? Like my wife is the nice warm whatever, and I'm like, get to work, and why are you still dragging your feet? And I can be an asshole. I'm working on it. Thank you, Brene. But it's a different experience, and so somebody with too much of a mismatch on the behavioral attributes that we measure, we're just going to be not seeing eye to eye,
Mhm.
eh, and that's going to cause disengagement and all kinds of issues in the work. And so, yeah, no, I'm kind of ad nauseum in all this, but it's just there's so many facets where something as simple and stupid as a job description can change everything.
Well, and we keep to your point, we keep doing these copy paste things, right? We go back to these library templates of job descriptions, job codes, whatever you want to call them, and we just expect different results. And it's like we're in a completely different world. People's expectations have
Hmm.
changed, technology is disrupted, and yet we keep going back to these same stale job descriptions and expecting different results. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about right now you guys have kind of a um, enterprise edition, if you will. But are you also working on almost a consumer edition of Aria?
Man, it's already built,
Okay.
and it's awesome, but it's not out there yet.
Hmm.
So because I have so many clients that were telling me about the personal growth and the therapy and the marriages and all that, I was just like, oh my gosh. And so, I mean, the last I looked, it was like 35 million Americans are already using AI for personal growth and
Yeah.
mental health. But back to the problem we talked about earlier, it doesn't really know you, nor is it trained for that. Plus, it wants to please the user. I mean, we saw some of the big lawsuits last year, with even like, really, really severe stuff, self-harm
Hmm.
and all that. Because it's just not tailor-made for that. So I'm like, man, I want to take the power of this like psychometric data, for a 10-minute assessment that's actually fun to do, and combine that with the behavioral AI as a mental health companion. And the only reason I haven't launched is like I get B2B. I have no clue how to do B2C, and I should
Yeah.
not be the person heading that initiative. So, once my bandwidth frees up a little bit, I'm actually going to be on the hunt for a co-founder,
Hmm.
somebody who can. The other thing we need is money. Right?
Sure.
I sold my
Yeah.
last company, so I bootstrapped the B2B. But going to the consumer world, advertising and influencers and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and beating everybody that might try to copycat us, that requires money, and I'm not going to go fundraise. I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Here.
So if any of your listeners are like co-founders, trailblazer types, hit me up. Let's
Yeah.
go rock the B2C world with a mental health companion
Yeah.
and change some lives.
I think it's such a fertile space, right? Like to your point, people
Mm.
are grasping. Again, I think it kind of goes to that soothing and that grasping of understanding who we are. It's been an interesting experience for me as a veteran. This is another space that I would
Mhm.
encourage you to look into
Oh
is
yeah.
the slice of society that is veterans. It's pretty fascinating because we ourselves have done a lot of inner work, but we haven't told people or we haven't sort of
Mhm.
put on blast or displayed. Obviously, Brene has done a lot of work with veterans and service members as well. Um, but I kind of find it fascinating that we, in secret, do so much of this work. We take every one of these tests. We take every one of these personalities.
Mhm.
I mean, I know people that would probably not admit it, but I'd say they really push to the edge of understanding who they are because they've been tested, they've been tried, they've seen
Yeah.
in some cases they've seen horrific things that has really shaped them. Um, and they're in many cases they're desperate, right? Just
Yeah.
for a sense of like again back to that reflection of understanding who I am.
And the minute they understand who they are, and I can attest to this as well, the minute you have a few answers, you've got 17 million more questions. And I actually think that's okay, but a lot of people run from that. I mean, I've said this for a long time. The currency is in the questions, and it will be, right? That's probably what took you to this work as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, man. Like we shouldn't have to go through this work solo. And um, I think that something like Aria can help. Number one, it is a companion, even though it's still a robot. I mean, it's not truly community. Um, but there's language that it can offer. There's like bringing things to light in ways that can make us more comfortable having the conversation. Um, the way I envision, askaria.com is like the B2C placeholder right now. And the way I envision like an Ask Aria product is that you have your own account, but you can like invite friends in,
Yeah.
and like create like your own little community. You don't see each other's results, but you can ask about those other people, how to interact, how to resolve conflict, how to support, and things like that. Um, and then the next evolution of that is to be able to bring people into certain chats
Mhm.
and collaborate, in this like, again, like mental health companion type of scenario. I don't know exactly what it looks like,
Yeah,
but
but
I mean, frankly, the sky's the limit,
yeah,
and there's a huge need for it.
it is. And there's, to your point, just describing the way you said, like invite friends in. I mean, this is kind of already happening in a way through like Signal chat. Like I know small groups of people that are just saying, hey, you know what? Jason, Bill, Joe, Dan, right? 4 of you get together. Here's a group chat in Signal. And what I find really interesting is there's a lot of outpouring, right, from the heart. And it's because people, for one, they feel so betrayed by the fact that like all of these other tools, right, we put our stuff in,
Mhm.
our data's been used against us.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of sacred trust that is constantly betrayed. And so we have to create our own spaces, and we have to just try. And this is where I agree with you. Like companion, possibly, it's never going to replace community, nor would I want it to. However, if I can find something like this that helps me, similar to what we did with Strength Finders back in the day, right? I remember Strength Finders with my teams. One of the most interesting parts of that tool we did was, yes, everybody took their thing. And rather than just sort of kind of report out, what we had each person do was go in to a room with a whiteboard individually and write their top strengths, their top 5, and then leave the room. And the next person came in, wrote their top, and then leave the room. And then we all brought each other back in. It was a group of maybe 8 to 10 folks, and we played Guess Who, right? And every single one of us were wrong, Jason. We had worked together at that point for multiple years, and every single one of us was wrong on our guess. And that was the most revealing
So
part of
funny.
it.
I just did that exact thing last week with a forum of, I think it was 7 or 8 CEOs who had done the Aptive Index. They brought me in to kind of present like, what the heck is this? Is really cool. And I had Aria do. It was a little bit higher level. It was more of like a roast,
Yeah.
like a behavioral roast, right? And so it had some humor to it. But it was still a cold read in a really accurate way. And I, separated them up into like 3 different groups of 2 or 3 people to try to guess who is who. And they probably only got 2 of the 7 right, which I actually was surprised by. And one of them was accidentally because I forgot to change where it said her, and there were only 2 women in the room,
Yeah.
right? So like I was cheating, and it is interesting that we know so little about each other. And a similar CEO forum, one of the things that Aria revealed when we were doing like a live chat about their dynamics as a group, it like pointed out this one guy, Carl. I'm making up that name, but it was like, Carl probably feels like an outsider in this group, and it kind of spelled out why. And they were like, no, no, everybody, we all love Carl. Carl loves us. And Carl's just sitting there, like almost on the verge of tears.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the facilitator, or one of my advisors who was running this group, he's like, hey, Carl, what do you think? And he's like, I've never read something truer about my experience in this group. And they're all like, what?
Yep.
it blew all their minds, and they all started kind of tearing up. A bunch of CEO dudes
Yeah.
in a room together, like tearing up just because of one little insight that this one guy felt like an outsider and was misunderstood. Like, golly, I love these stories. I mean, I have so many of them, right? It's
Yeah.
just on and on and on.
And that, to me, that's the power that we're just tapping, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have a group of people that are quite achieved, quite esteemed in a room, excuse me, that think the voice goes when I get emotional. But that's, hey, there's a sign
Oh,
for you,
good.
right? It's a good thing.
Yeah.
That think they know what who they are and what they carry. And then what's really fascinating is when the world reflects back to them that one thing that they've either, never said aloud, or in some cases been shielding, and it's reflected back to them. I personally think the human experience, the human condition, you can't help but be changed by that, right? And I love that story you shared where Carl got emotional. Um,
Mhm.
a similar thing happened to me where I was at corporate retreat, um, offsite, less retreat, more offsite. And we brought in this third party to do the things that you do, right? We all took our tests, we did everything, and we were kind of going around the circle, and they were like, "Is there anything that surprised people about some of their top qualifiers or descriptors?" Um, and one that kind of threw me was like courageous,
Mm.
and like daring and bold. And I was like, eh. I was like, hand up, I was like, this one didn't sit well with me. I mean, um, I tend to be more of like the empathetic and the listener and, help people get to the place they need to arrive. This just doesn't sit all that well with me. And the facilitator, like kudos to him, he had done his homework, right? And which again, he
Yeah.
should have. We were paying him a lot of money. He goes,
Ah,
that's interesting, Bill, because I see that you're a published poet. And I was like, immediately
you
like,
hadn't told him.
but
Yeah.
I hadn't told him.
Go crap.
And I was like, yes. And he said, he just asked a question, right? It wasn't a statement. He asked a question. He said, um, would you not think that putting your poetry out in the world for everyone to see and possibly criticize and critique is not a courageous thing to do? And in that moment, tears,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And nobody in that room saw me the same ever again.
That's awesome, dude. I love that.
And like, that's
I mean,
the
just
power of this.
yeah. Yes, and I know that this is like a little bit of a sidebar, but another question would be, in what ways might courage be required for you to be empathetic?
Exactly.
And like that gets deeper too, because yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna take perspective, if I'm gonna realize that I'm not always right, if I'm gonna put myself in somebody else's shoes, like, yeah, heck yeah, that requires courage.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing which was really fascinating for me in that experience was I realized that I had bifurcated courage with my military service, right? And I was in this corporate world, and so I kept saying to myself, well, ne'er shall the two meet, right? Like courage was this time in my life and when I did these things. But what I was reminded of was every act of courage makes a difference in someone's life, right? And so to your point, like the ability to show up empathetically, the ability to listen, the ability to make space for people, those are all courageous decisions, especially when you're faced with sort of monotony and routine and bureaucracy and all of these things, right? Those are acts of courage. And I think I had just segmented it away. And now just by that, right? That could have been an Aria interaction, right? It could have been just as simple and
Sure.
scaled, um, so that everybody could have had access to that information in a way without sort of revealing. But that's the power of some of this stuff, and I find it fascinating that like you and I connected when we did because for the past couple of years I've tried to bootstrap this thing for myself,
Yeah.
and it's working okay. Like I'll be honest, I started off in GPT. Um, I fed it a bunch of my stuff. This is how I was scanning documents from like my days at
Yeah.
IBM when I had all the IBM tests. I was
Yeah.
scanning
Right.
documents in, and it's all there. And then I moved it over to Claude, and Claude is much better in terms of
Yeah. It is.
just its ability to kind of ask questions,
Oh,
right? Of
and by the
me.
way, Opus 4.8 was released yesterday, and I've already tested it with our behavioral stuff. Holy crap.
I'm
It's
glad to
good.
hear that. I did see it got released yesterday. I was eager about it, but this is the intersection of where that testing gets really interesting to me. It's in the behavioral, it's in the nuance, it's in the context, it's in the questions that come back. That's one of the reasons I personally prefer Claude these days, is because in the place of effusive sycophancy, it's actually giving me critical, compelling questions before it takes it to the next sort of, okay, I see that you're seeking some information, right? Um, and I love that. It's like sitting down with a friend who I don't want to have an agreeable conversation with. I want them to
Yeah.
stretch me. I
Right.
want some physical
Yeah.
therapy
Push
for my
back. Yep.
soul, right? Like
Hmm.
that's the place I'm in. So I'm really excited that you're working on this. And you must be too. I mean, I can see the joy and I can hear the joy that you talk about this space, which is great. We need more of it. Personally, I'm just gonna like manifest these things. I can't wait till like you're on Brené's podcast as a guest talking about this. That's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, now that Brene and Adam Grant have a joint podcast, that's the one I want to get on.
Even better.
have them take the assessment and
Yeah.
like, yeah, just me peer into their souls.
Right. Riff off each other.
That would
Right.
be more interesting than me talking about this. Would be like to have their assessment results and just like give them a session of like, here's what I see and here's what Aria sees and like here's where your superpowers are, and yeah, that would be so fun.
And I mean,
Goals.
you're kind of right in there in Brené's backyard, right? So she's near
Yeah.
Austin still, right? So
She does live in Austin now. So she was back and forth in Houston, and from what I understand, she and her sisters all moved here.
great.
Um,
Awesome.
and when I was at that training, she said I was her favorite. Now,
Well, I mean,
she was maybe just responding to me hook 'em horns
yeah.
as I introduced myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I stand by it.
Yeah. Well, with that, go with that, right? Um, l- Last couple minutes, and I appreciate again, like technology didn't play well with us today, but hey, that's how I know I'm about to have a deep conversation or deeper conversation because technology just can't keep up. So that's the other thing I encourage people to think about, right? Like all of this is limiting, meaning it can take us so far, but then at some point it can't hold, the sacred container that we are. So I encourage people to really kind of think about how to use it. But in these last couple moments, I would love to have you share like if people want to learn more about adaptive, both the B2B and then eventually the B2C, where can they go? What can they try to
Sure.
learn more about you?
So aptiveindex.com, and it's not adaptive, it's a made up word, but aptive, APTIV index.com is where we are, and you can like request demos and all that. But I just had a thought. I'll create you a link
Okay.
for your podcast
Yeah.
for people to take the assessment, and at the end of it is like a little, like you get 3 or 4 messages to preview Aria. So you
Great.
can like ask her some questions.
Great.
There's no path to become a consumer client yet, but you would at least like, you kind of get that preview. If you're a business, of course, call me. But
Jump on. Yeah.
yeah, that'd be a fun thing for you to do. You use your own link,
Yeah.
and just kind of get that preview of like, what would this behavioral AI say about me,
Yeah.
that I may not know, or maybe it's just language or whatever. So yeah, we'll do that. That'll be the most fun thing, I think.
I think that's awesome. And then one last thing I'll leave you with, which is kind of a future sort of thing for me. Um, I've got basically 10 years of conversations like this, right? With people from all over the world. And one of the things that I've worked with and I've kind of evolved is almost a mini version of Aria through this podcast. By that, I mean, after episode 50, I had no ability to go back and be like, oh, I remember that Jason said this thing, right? Like, and I would get these really interesting questions from people to say, hey, I'm a graduating college student or I'm a new founder. What's a good episode to listen to for fill in the blank, right? And I used to kind of be able to do that off the top of my head. I mean, 100 episodes and beyond, like, yeah, no way I could do that. And
No
so I
way.
built this sort of mini model to be able to ask it questions to find answers like that people are asking me. But it's since evolved in a way where I'm actually now allowing it to teach me or remind me about things about myself in conversations like this because I've had almost 200 of them, right? And there's got to be something in there, like psychometrics and patterns and the words I use and the questions I ask. Like, of course, we think we're so divinely unique in every way. We're very much the same. Um, that's a fascinating part of this too. So like, imagine if you took what you did and you went to podcast hosts and said, hey, you've got this
Yeah.
entire library of incredible conversations, long form podcast. People would love this. Right. And then layer on top of that all of the stuff. It would be fascinating.
Yeah,
My mind
like
races.
I love that. Like an AI, you go vectorize.
Mhm.
Even going back to your RAG,
Yeah.
comment earlier, vectorize the transcripts of every podcast you've done as like a knowledge base of the golden nuggets.
There you go.
Like, go find me the golden nugget when so and so said this profound thing about airplanes. I don't know.
Mhm.
You could just draw from all of that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's where my mind like races in such a good way around this. But there's a lot of
Go build it.
possibilities. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, what's stopping me?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Look at Voyage AI.
Okay.
Is a really easy, clean thing. Like if you use like Claude Code or something to
Mhm.
like build little agents, Voyage AI is really clean and simple and easy to vectorize a big source of data.
Awesome.
So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Jason, again for the time and the patience and the dexterity. Hey, that's where we are on a Friday morning. I really enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait to try out
Yeah, same.
the app and again, I'm building my own Aria origin story that's based on Game of
Cool. Yeah.
Thrones, which I think you should have fun with that. Depending on your audience, you should totally say that. So
Nice. Yeah. Well, we already have so many references. Like I have two separate demo portals where I can like log in and like demo it without exposing people's actual data.
yeah,
One of them is Dunder Mifflin.
yes.
So I've got like the 17 main characters of what I actually believe their profiles would look like, and like teams of jobs. And the other is what I call Shield,
Mm,
as in Agents of Shield, as in
yes.
Marvel. So
Yep.
it's like I think it's 94 Marvel MCU characters. I got bored on a Thanksgiving one
Wow.
day when I didn't have my kids. So like 94 MCU characters, like when they all have fake email addresses too, because like
Yes.
my system requires an email address. So like, I mean, we got silly, like, Drax has a Hotmail because he doesn't know how to use technology. And, Peter Quill is like Star-Lord69 at
Mhm.
something.com because he's immature.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so ridiculous and over the top.
And that's
It's super nerd.
And that's also kind of the fun stuff, honestly. Like to your point, something that's never put in a job description is, hey, have fun when you're demoing, when you're doing the demo profile. Like to your point, I love that stuff. When people are like, hey, you're a change manager. Yeah, I am. I can do all that stuff. But you know what I love doing? Demoing. And they're like, you shouldn't demo. You're not a product manager. And I'm like, I love demoing, folks. Like, let me demo. Let me create the fake email address. Let me have fun with it. Let
Yeah.
me use a Harry Potter reference or a Game of Thrones reference.
Right.
And people are like, oh my God, you're really good at this. And I'm like, put that in the job description. So, case in point.
Love it.
Awesome.
Man, I'm sure your audience are good sports because we've like rabbit holed all kinds of left and right and up and down. But hey, that's where the fun is.
That's where, and those are the kind of people that listen to a show like this because they're literally like, oh, he's
Yeah,
going there. Oh,
absolutely.
he's going there. Oh, he's going there. Yes. So, like, all here for it. So, thank you again. Have a great weekend. And
Thanks so much. You
I
too.
can't wait to ship it.
Cool. Thanks so much. Bye.